guys, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be going over my January wrap-up. Now this is my first time doing a wrap-up at all, especially on YouTube, and so I figured the first thing I should do is sort of explain my rating system. I usually use a 5-star rating system just like Goodreads. However, sometimes I will give books those half-star marks in between the stars. However, I sort of wanted to just tell you guys a little bit about what my rating system means for me personally. In my 25 Bookish Facts About Me video, which I will leave a link down below in case you're curious, I mentioned that I rate books mostly based on my emotions. And that is very true for my rating system as well. I give 5 stars to a book if I absolutely loved it for some sort of emotional connection, either to like the plot, the characters, the overall book in general. There is just this feeling that I don't know how to really describe, but if I feel that, then I give it 5 stars. If I do not feel that, but I still like the book, I thought the plot was good, the characters were good, maybe something was just a little bit off, I will give the book 4 stars. At 3 stars, that is where I'm at the meh point for a book. It's okay, it's not bad, I wasn't thrilled about it, and so I gave it a 3 stars. If I get down to a 2 stars for a book, that means I really did not like it, or there was some aspect of it that just made me dislike pretty much the entire thing. If I give a book 2 stars, that means I did still actually finish the book. It is when it comes to me giving a book a 1 star that it means that I DNF'd the book or did not finish the book. I have not done that in a while. The most common books that I have rated on Goodreads as a 1 star are the ones that I was forced to read in high school that I absolutely hated. I will, in my future wrap-ups, let you know if I ever DNF a book so that you know I gave it 1 star. However, I do not have any of those today, so I'm very happy about that. So I'm just going to be going down my list in the order that they were read, and let's just get started. The first book that I read in January was Fence Issue 2. This is by C.S. Pacat and Joanna the Mad. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. This is something that I have definitely talked about before, especially in my January favorites. I am absolutely in love with this series. I actually found out about it because I follow Joanna the Mad, who is the artist on this series. I follow her on Instagram. And then I also have read C.S. Pacat's Captive Prince trilogy, which I liked as well. This story follows Nicholas and Seiji, who are the 2 characters here on the front, who are fencers, and they are going to be going into fencing competitions. This is a book that is supposed to be LGBTQ eventually, however, it's not quite there yet. This is only the 2nd issue in the comic series, and so each issue is like 20-something, maybe 30 pages. So they are very quick reads. You only get a small bit of information at once. However, I am absolutely in love with it already. The characterization is amazing. They pack as much plot and character into these small issues as possible, and I am absolutely in love with the art style. It is so clean, and I love the coloring on them as well. I am just absolutely in love with this one. The 3rd one was supposed to come out in January. I am still waiting for my copy to come in the mail. I think that is my only issue right now is because I don't have a comic book store near me that I know that sells the Boombox issues of comics, and that is the publisher of this one. So in order to get around that, I subscribed to this comic through the Boombox website. However, there's never any tracking information on these issues, and so they come when they come. They are supposed to be sent out close to when the release date is, and on the website I do believe it says it can take anywhere from like 3 to 10 business days to get to you. I am nearing that 10 business day mark, and so I'm very anxiously awaiting the 3rd issue. I love these so much, and I really can't wait to have it in my hands. I'm hoping that they are going to eventually bind these up into a whole bind-up of the comics, like a trade paperback version, and I would absolutely love to purchase that to add to my collection. The next book I read in January was Starfall. This is the 2nd book in the Starflight series by Melissa Landers. This is a book that I gave 3 stars out of 5, And actually, if I was really going to be talking to somebody else who had read this book, I could be convinced to give it a 2.5. However, I did not think it was fair to give it a 2 stars because there were some things I liked about the book. I think my biggest disappointment in this book is that I actually gave the first book in this series, Starflight, a 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the 2 main characters in that book, and I was very excited to see where it was going. It reminded me a lot of Firefly and Serenity, and it was, while not a 5-star read, it was still really, really good. I bought this second book actually before I even bought the first book, and so I didn't read the synopsis of this one before I went into it. One of the biggest changes is this actually follows Cassia and Cain, who are side characters in the first book. So while I liked them being side characters in the first book, I wasn't too sure how I felt about them being the main characters in this book. They were okay. I liked Cain a lot better than I liked Cassia. However, this author writes in third person, and I don't see a lot of the characters' emotions in the writing. It seems a little bit more like I'm telling you the story instead of showing you, and there would be a lot of time between switches in the point of view, because it would go from Cassia's as the main third-person point of view to Cain as the main third-person point of view, and there were definitely times where it would go from Cassia to Cain, but there would be like days or weeks in between, and it would jump that plot so far forward in the time of the book that sometimes I just didn't quite know where we were in the story. We never really got to see Solara and Doran from the first book. There would be multiple times where we would just not see them for chapters after chapters, and then we would get like a small one sentence about them that they went off and did something else. I disliked the feeling that these characters that I had grown to love in the first book were sort of thrown off to the side. There was also a big discrepancy for me in this one. Cassia and Cain, they're supposed to have like almost like a forbidden romance, but you know that they like each other. And after a while in this book, I had no idea that Cassia was even supposed to like Cain. I did not like her as much as a character. She sort of stuck up. I love this cover, and I actually really, really liked the first book. I heard there was supposed to be a third book coming out, but because of the sales of this one and even maybe the first book, she's not sure if she wants to write that anymore, or even if she's able to write that anymore. The third book was supposed to follow a different character who we met in the first book as well. So I think my biggest issue with these is the fact that they're not actually books that follow one another in the series. They're more, I feel like, sister series books, because everything that happened in the first book doesn't really tie in to what happened in this one. So this one was a little bit of a disappointment compared to the first novel. The next book I read this month is Dark Demise. This is the 7th book in the Wings of Artemis series by Rebecca Royce. This is a book that I read on ebook because it is independently published by its author. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. It was a pretty good read. I have the same issue with this book and actually a few books in this series as I do with the Starfall book. This series is a reverse harem series that follows different characters. So each main female character ends up with pretty much 2 books in the series. And this is the 7th. So this is the very first novel with a brand new main female character whose name is Waverly. I actually really like Rebecca Royce's writing style, and she has great characterization. And the one thing I really like, even though she ends up switching characters, is that this plot is an overarching plot. There are many plots that go through each book or even through each main female character's arc. However, the whole overarching plot is still the same plot that started around the first and second book. It's a big sci-fi sort of space opera sort of thing, and it follows these characters as they are living through this sort of war with these bad guys that came in from previous books. So all of that ties in together. Because we know some of these characters from other books, we're expected to like them right away. And I really did not see as much character development in Waverly right away. I did not actually like her or her being the main character until I want to say at least halfway to 60% through the book. after we got past a certain point, I really did like her, but she is very hard on herself. She thinks she's ugly. She doesn't want to hear about anybody else telling her that she's not. And the main guys that she is with almost seem to fall in insta-love with her because we haven't gotten to know them as characters as much either. They have been names thrown around in other books, so we know of them, but we don't really know all of them as characters. So I actually really loved it by the end, and I do have to give you a spoiler warning. Rebecca Royce is amazing at cliffhangers. So of course this one ended on a big one. I am so looking forward to the next one because I do feel like the second book in each female character's arc is her best one. The first one sets it up, and the second one completely delivers on it for me. So I'm not mad about it. I did fall in love with the characters by the end of the book, but I do sometimes feel like because she switches it up every other book, that I end up taking longer to fall in love with these characters than I would have if it was actually the 7th book in a series I had been reading faithfully with the same characters all the way through. It's just that learning curve of having to find out about these characters again. And I just feel like this one still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I still really liked it. I just didn't feel that emotional connection because I was having to learn more about these characters in a plot that had already been developing for 6 other stories. The next books that I read this month were Captive Hearts of Oz, Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is by Rio Maruya, and these ones I did also give 4 out of 5 stars. As I mentioned in my book haul, which I will link down below if you're interested, I am very picky with my manga choices, and so this was one of those ones that popped up on Book Outlet. I was interested, probably was not interested enough at first to pick these up on my own in a bookstore for full price, but I love shoujo manga, and so I love all the cutesy sort of aspects of it, and I was interested to see about this one. This author previously did the Alice in the Land of Hearts series that I have not read, mostly because the art style of the manga was not quite up to my liking. This one is much closer to it. You can see how she's progressed in this, and I loved it. I gave it a 4 stars because I'm still not entirely sure where they're completely going with it, but I am very intrigued. It does follow a girl named Dorothy who ends up in the land of Oz after a twister takes her up in her house with her dog Toto. So like it does have the classic elements to the Wizard of Oz story. However, there's also other characters that were not introduced in the other story. There's some sort of thing going on with the storybook. There have been characters alluding to the fact that this plays out like a storybook and how certain aspects of this story are not quite matching up. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. Right now, we have gotten to the point where the characters that know about the storybook realize something is wrong. They realize not everything is happening the way it should. The other characters that do not know that they're in a story have no idea about this yet. So I'm very excited to see about this one. I know the 3rd book is out. I need to pick it up because I cannot wait to continue. The next book I read in January was Found. It is the first in the Books of Stone series. This is by B.L. Brunimer, and it is a spin-off or companion series to the Veil Diaries series by B.L. Brunimer. That is actually these ones right here. These 5 out of 5 stars. I love them. They are one of my favorite series ever. And so I ended up giving Found, the first book in the new series, a 4 out of 5 stars. I almost wanted to give it 3 stars when I first started reading. It is a very big departure from the Veil Diaries series. The Veil Diaries series is a young adult series about a girl who has some paranormal powers where she can see ghosts. But everything else in that story is normal. Her friends are normal. She's pretty much the only one that can see ghosts, and it is a very paranormal story that way. It is a little bit thrilling, a little bit scary, but I absolutely loved it. B.L. Brunimer is a great author for character-driven stories with plot, where the plot does also sometimes advance the story, but the characters are the central part of it. Now, with Found, this is an adult paranormal romance story. And I do not mind adult books, especially if they're paranormal romance. However, there is a big departure from the Veil Diaries series, where the Veil Diaries series is just a paranormal where the main character can see ghosts. The main character in the Books of Stone series, Evelyn, is a gargoyle. Now, that doesn't bother me too much per se, except for the fact that it is supposed to be taking place in the exact same world as the Veil Diaries. A world that we have previously, in the last 4 books, only known that it is a real world situation with ghosts. And now, all of a sudden, there are gargoyles and witches and werewolves and a whole host of other things. I'm not entirely too sure how I feel about that, because now it just ends up bringing up a whole bunch of new questions for my favorite series. I loved the little tidbits of hints from the other series, little mentions of characters or places. That was great. But I'm not sure how I feel about a series that was supposed to be mostly a real world situation with paranormal aspects being a complete fantasy. The other thing I wasn't entirely too sure about is the main man for Evelyn, so her love interest, is a jerk. I absolutely hated him for about the first 40% of the book. I love Evelyn. She doesn't take any crap from him. She is a very strong, independent woman. She knows exactly what she wants and what she has to do, and she's amazing. But he's a jerk. So I was very, very conflicted about this, especially since in this book it's supposed to be a sort of mates. It's a romance where it is a little bit, not quite insta-love, maybe insta-lust, but they know they're supposed to be together as mates. And that happens quite early in the book, so it's not really a spoiler, but he's a jerk. The other side characters, I love absolutely every single one of them. If he wasn't such a jerk, and he does get better after that 40% mark, I started to like him a little bit more, but I'm still holding a grudge a little bit because of the way he treated her at the beginning of the book. I think it's going to be a great series. I'm just not entirely too sure how it connects to this series. I absolutely love Evelyn, and I love all the other main characters except for Atticus. Atticus is just, he has to be redeemed in my eyes, and I'm sure this author will pull it off because she is one of my favorite authors. She is amazing. She's actually an independent author, publishes her own books as well, but I love her stories, and I know she's going to do better. The next book that she's coming out with is the next book in the Veil Diaries series, and I know I'm going to love it. So I just had a few issues with this first book in her adult series that I'm sure I will get over with time. But when I first started reading it, if I didn't know her as an author and trust her completely, I'm not sure if I would have wanted to finish before it got good. The next book that I have for January is Dreamin Sun Volume 5. This is by Ichigo Takano, and I did give it 5 out of 5 stars. This is one of my new favorite mangas out right now. I absolutely love this story. This one volume was not as much my favorite as some of the other ones, only because the main girl in this story lives with some high school classmates and their landlord, and she cannot figure out who she has feelings for. I have a feeling she's going to end up liking one of them who also likes her back, because we actually know one of the guys likes her. He's actually really sort of goofy and silly, but in a cute way, so I'm actually really rooting for him. But in this volume here, she is not in love with him. She thinks she's in love with another character, and some of the other characters are just sort of letting her do that, even if it might end up hurting somebody. It does get better toward the end. It was just, out of all the volumes, not my favorite. However, I still absolutely loved it. The art style is gorgeous. I love all the main characters separately. I just do not like the guy she's trying to go after in this book with her. Separately, they are perfect characters. Together, I don't like them as a couple, so I'm really, really hoping that changes eventually. The 6th book should be coming out in a couple months, I think, so I'm going to have a little while to wait for it, but I am super excited to get back into this one. And then I had a reading resolution for this year, which was to read a Star Trek book every single month, because I have been collecting the novels from the 70s and 80s that I need to read, and I haven't been doing that. Now, I did start reading one this month, however, I got sidetracked with some of these other books that I was reading, and I did not finish it. So I'm cheating a little bit, and I instead read Star Trek Boldly Go Volume 1, and Volume 2. These are by Mike Johnson, and I gave Star Trek Boldly Go Volume 1 a 5 out of 5 stars, and I gave Star Trek Boldly Go Volume 2 a 4 out of 5 stars. So let me start with this one here. I absolutely loved it. It follows the events of Star Trek Beyond, and they end up split up a little bit because of the fact that the Enterprise was sort of demolished in that movie. So these characters end up on different ships, different planets, that kind of stuff, and they end up meeting the Borg, which is from the Next Generation Star Trek. I do not know about that one as much because I haven't really watched those episodes. I know of the Borg, but I haven't watched the episodes or movies they're in. But I was very interested to see what it was going on in this one. So this one follows that sort of meeting. All the characters end up sort of back together to solve this issue. The last 1 or 2 stories in here were just like one-off issues of other things, which were not horrible, but I liked the overarching story with the Borg. And so I was very happy about that. The art style was amazing. I loved the characterization. It was very, very faithful to the movies. The last couple issues were in other art styles, and because they weren't with the overarching story, I did not like them as much. However, it did not take away from my enjoyment of this. Now, this second one I gave 4 out of 5 stars because it's supposed to follow the events of Star Trek Boldly Go Volume 1. However, none of this really connects into that. The art styles, there was, I think, 2 different ones, and they switched back and forth. There was a couple issues in one art style, a couple issues in another, and then it went back to the first one. I don't like the jumping around of the art styles as much, even though I really liked both of them. I thought they were both beautiful and worked with the stories, but I did not like the fact that it jumped around a little bit. And then this one was full of more short stories. 1 or 2 issues together that made up a story instead of an overarching story like the first volume. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Good, but I would have preferred an overarching story. And then the last thing I would actually like to talk about in my wrap-up is Hidden Agenda. This is something I talked about in my January favorites, which will be linked down below. And my friends and I finally got to finish it this last game day. It was great. I actually would give it 4 out of 5 stars. Very, very, very close to 5 stars. We definitely enjoyed it. We did so well in it. We didn't get anybody killed because it is like Until Dawn. Pretty much everybody can die. However, we did not get the very best ending. We did look it up to see what it was, and we were so close. We almost got there. We were so close to it. And I actually did like it both ways. However, the biggest issue I'm having right now is that because it was more of a movie where we could cooperatively make decisions to move that story along, it was short. It was 3 parts, and I believe it took us around 3.5 hours total. Because of that, there were a lot of unanswered questions at the end. Even with knowing what the best ending was, I really, really wish there was more. And I mean, it definitely has enough going for it that there could be a sequel, and I would totally welcome it. The graphics were amazing, the overall story was amazing, the playthrough was amazing, especially with the collaborative style of it. But there was just not enough. It was just like it was over so quickly, and we really wanted more. There was definitely more to go on. Hidden Agenda has you follow these 2 women, the main cop and the lawyer, who end up investigating this character who had been put in jail as a serial killer and has come out saying he was innocent before he was supposed to be killed on death row, and you're supposed to investigate whether he actually is the killer or not. It was amazing. We enjoyed it so much. There were times where we all agreed, and there were times where we had to not really argue, but we had to get our point across to see if anybody would change their mind. It was amazing. The only problem was that a little bit too short, or they need to come out with extra, either a sequel or DLC or something. So 4 out of 5 stars. We loved it, but we did want more, which I guess is the best thing you can say about something like this. So that was my wrap up for January. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know. Let me know in the comments down below what you've been doing this month, either TV shows, movies, video games, books. I would love to hear from you guys, especially if you have a suggestion for me. I would love to try out stuff that you guys are loving this month. I will have a new video up on Monday, so I will see you then. Bye!